Welcome to Training Design 101, a micro training on how to go from topic to effective training delivery. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Diondra Filicetti. I am a professional speaker and trainer and also the author of Engagement Economics. Training and training design is at the core of what I do. So I want to start by asking you if you have ever been asked to do a presentation or training session and you didn't know where to start. If that's the case, that means that you've got a lot of ideas, you're knowledgeable on the topic, but the question is, how do you structure those ideas? And how do you structure them in a way that's going to be valuable and engaging for your audience? So in this short training, I'm going to cover an overview of how to plan and structure your training, designing best practices, and also a quick introduction of presentation delivery. So let's start with plan and structure. So at this point, you have been given a topic, but how do you turn that topic into a training? Well, step one, learning objectives. In order to come up with your learning objectives for this session, you need to ask yourself, by the end of your training, what do participants need to be able to do? An emphasis on the do. For example, for a training on vegetable gardening, learning objectives might be, how do they plant a garden? What tools do they use? And how does it successfully grow? It's thinking about the how and the standard that they should achieve. In other words, how do they know if they're doing it well? It's not just knowledge about the types of plants. Another example for training on video editing. Learning objectives might be, how do they edit a video? What software do they use? And what should an edited video look like? Types of cuts, sound effects, best practices, those sorts of things. But it's not just knowledge of what the software is able to do. And lastly, for a training on social media marketing, learning objectives might be, how do they market on social media? What should they be doing exactly? And what does successful marketing look like? It's not just knowledge of the platforms. So let's take our topic of vegetable gardening, for example. We're going to identify 3 learning objectives because the rule of 3 states that 3 learning objectives is most comfortable for your learners. So for vegetable gardening, we might have the following learning objectives. How to choose an appropriate location for optimal sunlight, how to prepare soil and plant seeds correctly, and how to maintain the garden for healthy growth. And then these appear on which slide in your training? Your agenda, of course. Okay, so that's how we go from topic to learning objectives. What's step 2? Creating a framework. So can you relate? Have you ever been given a presentation assignment and then you went straight to PowerPoint to start working on it? Yeah. I think we all have. But instead of starting in PowerPoint or Canva, this is not the ideal way to begin. Instead, we want to start in Word. It may seem faster in the beginning to start right in PowerPoint, but it's always slower in the end, and I'll show you why. So you've got your topic and your learning objectives for the topic of vegetable gardening. And a framework is simply a table that helps you plan your training, breaking it down into time. How much time do you need for this activity? Which of the learning objectives you're supporting with the activity and what the learners are experiencing in the training. And lastly, what, if any, supplies do you need? So here's a quick example of how you'd fill this out. So you typically start with your introduction, which doesn't necessarily have a learning objective or supplies in this case, and maybe it only takes a minute or 2. So our first activity will be to support learning objective number 1, where we're going to have a discussion on how much sun does the plant need, the best places at home and other climate needs. And for supplies, we might want to have a soil sample and some sample photos. Next, if we continue to fill this out for the rest of the time that we have in the training, the next step we can do is look at learning objective number 2 and maybe do a demo on how to prepare the soil. That might take 30 minutes. And in that time, we can also show the tools that the learners would require, what they look like, and how to use them. Eventually, you'll have something like this. And in fact, for designing this very micro training session, this is a screenshot of the framework that I used, which guided me on which slides I needed to create instead of just starting from scratch in PowerPoint. So in the process of going from topic to training, you've now identified your learning objectives, you've built out a framework, and step 3 is collecting supporting information and examples. This is filling in the blanks with the use of examples, statistics, stories. And what you would do is generally research or review notes that you have on this, going to collect photos. And once you have all of that, you can plug that into your PowerPoint presentation. So as you're designing your PowerPoint presentation or other visuals for your training, I just want to give you a couple of design best practices. And I'm going to do that through an activity. The activity is, what's wrong with this? I'm going to show you a slide and just think to yourself for 10 to 15 seconds, what immediately flags you as wrong with this slide? Okay, slide number 1. Right? Do you immediately see that there's way too much text on this slide? It's overwhelming. All of this information can be presented differently. Also, the text is too small. So if you're trying to read this from the back of the room, it might be difficult for some of your learners. Here's the second slide. And you're probably thinking here, what the heck is going on? This table is not so easy to understand. There's a lot happening on the slide. The text is very small, and even the use of contrast is not very strong with the light gray. So when it comes to building professional slides, we always want to abide by the 3-second rule. And no, it's not the one where you drop a piece of food on the floor and you pick it up and eat it within 3 seconds. No, the 3-second rule for training design states that an audience should be able to fully understand a slide and what's going on that slide within 3 seconds. Any more than that, and your slide is too complex, and it's going to distract your audience from paying attention to you as the facilitator. So when it comes to building out your slides, you want to make sure that you're limiting text. Limit the text on the slide and keep it very simple. And make sure it's readable, right? Make sure the text is an appropriate size for even those at the back of the room. And finally, use images or visuals where possible, because you can say a lot more with an image than you can with text. So as an example, you might use visuals such as, for your vegetable gardening training, photos of vegetables. Maybe it's a graphic to show different stages or layouts of a vegetable garden. Maybe you've got a sample video.
As a gardener, it is a temptation to grow just about everything.
Some other tools you might want to use other than Google or YouTube is using Unsplash for free images for your training, or Canva if you have the premium version, and also Flat Icon for icons in your training. Okay, so going from topic to training, we have identified our learning objectives, we've built a framework, we've collected information, examples, and we've also designed our slides. All that's left is to deliver the training. And here's a couple quick notes about delivering your training. So number 1, are you using your speaker notes correctly? You don't want to just read paragraphs from your speaker notes, but instead include prompts to ask questions or explain concepts, and also make sure that it's structured in bullet points to support your delivery so that you don't get shackled to reading off a script, but you have some bullet points that will allow you to expand on it in front of your audience. Next, let's talk about a couple verbal cues. And the 2 that are most important that I see in training delivery that are often lacking are emphasis and vocal variety. When people get nervous, these are often the first 2 vocal elements that are dropped. Now, I'm going to read the first half of the text on the screen in a monotone voice with no emphasis and no vocal variety. And then the second half, I will use emphasis and vocal variety, and you can see the difference immediately. Let's begin. Dogs make a better companion than cats do because dogs are loyal, more playful, and more affectionate. Monotone. Now instead, we could say, for example, You often see dogs walking or doing activities with their owners, not cats. Therefore, a dog would make a better companion. Introducing some vocal variety and emphasis makes what you're saying more interesting and more engaging for the audience. What I would recommend doing is in your practice including emphasis and vocal variety with what you're saying. And take that as far as recording yourself on your phone and listening back to your audio to see if there is enough emphasis or opportunities to include more vocal variety. Then, once you've listened to the audio, you can also video record yourself. And in this case, you're looking for mannerisms and body language that you can adjust. So in both cases, you want to evaluate whether or not you're using filler words like, or like, whether you're including enough vocal variety and emphasis, whether you're using pauses to your advantage, and whether or not gestures are helpful or distracting for your audience. So that concludes Training Design 101 and how to go from topic to a training. Share with me one key takeaway from today's session in the comments. And also, if there's any questions, also let me know in the comments. Thank you very much.